Most Tesla owners spend money trying to fix a range problem that was never really a hardware issue to begin with. I've talked to hundreds of EV drivers over the years, people who bought accessories, upgraded charging setups, even traded in perfectly good cars, when the real answer was buried inside the settings menu they'd never opened or a driving habit they'd never thought twice about. In this video, I'm walking you through 7 things that genuinely move the needle on range. All free, all tested, numbered 7 down to 1, because the last one is the one I'd tell a brand new Tesla owner on day 1 if I had 60 seconds with them. Let's get into it. Method number 7. Turn off what your car is running while it sits. I've had owners come to me frustrated because their Tesla drops 3, 4, sometimes 5% overnight and they haven't driven anywhere. They assume something is wrong with the battery. Usually what's happening is much simpler. The car is just quietly running features that nobody told them to turn off. Sentry mode is the biggest one I see. It's a security system that keeps your cameras active and your car's computer fully awake the entire time you're parked. If you're leaving your Tesla in a high-risk area, it makes total sense, but I've seen owners running it in a locked private garage for years without realizing it's chipping away at their range every single night. You can set location-based exclusions in the Tesla app so it disables automatically at home. Most people don't know that option exists. Dog mode, camp mode, and keep climate on are the other regulars. These run your HVAC system continuously while the car is stationary. They serve real purposes. But what I've noticed is that people sometimes leave them on by accident after a trip and don't realize it until the next morning when the battery reads 10% lower than expected. The fix is as simple as checking your app before you walk away from the car. Third-party apps that continuously pull your Tesla's data are something a lot of owners don't think about at all. Tesla specifically flags this. Non-Tesla apps that keep querying your vehicle systems can hold the car in a semi-awake state, pulling a slow, steady drain that adds up over days. In my experience, people are surprised when I suggest checking what's connected to their vehicle account, but it's often where those extra phantom losses are hiding. The practical habit that works. Plug in whenever the car is parked for an extended time. When the car is connected to a charger, it draws from the grid for those background features instead of your stored battery. And if you're leaving the car unused for more than 2 weeks, set the charge limit to around 50% before you go. A battery sitting at the top or bottom of its charge range while idle tends to degrade faster than one held comfortably in the middle. Method number 6. Stop charging to 100% every night. This is one of those things where customers usually think they're being responsible, filling the tank all the way, but with lithium-ion chemistry it's actually working against you on 2 levels simultaneously. I've explained this more times than I can count, so let me walk through it the way I do in person. Tesla recommends keeping your daily charge limit at 80% for most vehicles, and you'll find this setting right on the charging screen. Just drag the slider. The first reason this helps your range isn't about battery degradation, it's about regenerative braking. When your battery is at 100%, it's physically full. There's nowhere to put the energy that regen tries to recover when you slow down. So the system automatically reduces regenerative braking strength because it has no room to store what it's capturing. You lose one of Tesla's most effective efficiency tools simply because you charge too high. The second angle that most owners miss is the long-term picture. In my experience with EV battery behavior, cells that regularly cycle between 80–90% and around 20% tend to hold their capacity better over time than those that are pushed to the top repeatedly. Tesla's own guidance says to avoid letting the car sit at or near 100% for days at a stretch. The charge limit isn't just a preference, it's an active management tool for keeping the battery healthy. A battery that holds 95% of its original capacity at 100,000 miles is giving you meaningfully more range than one that's degraded to 85% from avoidable charging habits. There's also a practical tip that usually surprises people: charge frequently rather than deeply. Plugging in every night to top off from 70% to 80% is healthier for lithium cells than letting the battery run down to 15% and then doing one big charge to 90%. Frequent shallow cycles are gentler on the chemistry. I usually compare it to how most people charge their phones now. You don't wait until it dies, you plug in whenever you're near an outlet. Method number 5. Understand what speed is actually costing you. Most people have a vague awareness that going faster uses more energy. What they don't have is a real feel for how dramatic the relationship actually is. Once you understand the physics here, your approach to highway cruising changes pretty quickly. Aerodynamic drag doesn't scale with speed in a straight line. It scales with the square of your speed. What that means in practice is that going from 70 to 80 miles per hour doesn't just add a little more consumption, it adds a lot more. The energy required to push the car through the air at 80 mph is significantly higher than at 70 mph, even though the difference feels small from behind the wheel. Tesla's documentation is pretty straightforward about this. Doubling speed can demand up to 4 times the energy per mile. That's not a rounding error. I've talked to Model Y owners who were consistently getting 20 to 30 fewer miles per charge than their EPA estimate and couldn't figure out why. When we looked at their driving patterns, highway speed was almost always the main factor. They were cruising at 80 to 85 mph on their commute without thinking much of it. Dropping to 70 or 72 didn't feel like a meaningful change from inside the car, but the difference showed up clearly in their efficiency numbers over the following week. There's a sweet spot for most Teslas on the highway that tends to fall in the 55 to 65 mph range for maximum efficiency, though most people aren't willing to drive that slowly in normal traffic, which is completely reasonable. The more useful takeaway is that if you're on a longer drive between superchargers and you want to arrive with comfortable margin, dropping your cruise control even 5 miles per hour for a sustained stretch recovers meaningful range. It's not about crawling in the right lane. It's about being deliberate when the situation calls for it. Wind also plays into this in a way people don't factor in. A consistent headwind at highway speeds can add noticeable drag. I've seen owners on road trips puzzled by unexpected range loss, and the culprit turned out to be sustained headwinds of 15 to 20 mph that they hadn't considered. The Energy app on the touchscreen can actually show you when external conditions are the dominant factor. More on that in a moment. Method number 4. Use the Energy app as your real-time range coach. There's a screen inside your Tesla that most owners have genuinely never opened, and it's one of the more useful tools on the whole touchscreen. It's called the Energy app, and it lives in your apps menu. Once you start using it regularly, it changes how you think about driving efficiency, not because it gives you generic advice, but because it shows you your specific numbers in real time. What it displays is a live graph of your energy consumption over your choice of the last 10, 100, or 200 miles. You can see a breakdown of what's actually consuming energy, driving speed, climate control, elevation changes, and other loads. And it compares your real consumption against your projected range. Here's what makes it valuable. The range number displayed on your dashboard is based on EPA test data, which is a standardized figure that has nothing to do with how you personally drive, where you drive, or what the weather is doing today. The Energy app shows you your actual real-world number. Those two figures are often meaningfully different. In my experience, people who spend a week actually watching this screen start naturally adjusting their behavior. You can see in real time that climate control is the second largest energy consumer after vehicle speed. You notice that the last few miles of freeway on-ramp cost you more than 5 miles of flat city driving. You start lifting off the accelerator earlier before stops because you can see the regen capturing energy. It creates a feedback loop that no amount of reading about efficiency will replicate. The app also delivers personalized suggestions based on your driving patterns. Not generic EV tips, but observations drawn from your specific recent history. That level of feedback is something most owners don't even know is available to them. A lot of the time when someone tells me their range has been worse lately, the first thing I ask is whether they've looked at the Energy app breakdown. Usually the answer is no, and usually the app tells the story pretty clearly once they open it. Method number 3. Switch to chill mode. It's not just a beginner setting. Chill mode has a reputation problem. People hear the name and immediately assume it's for new drivers or people who are scared of the car. In reality, it's one of the more effective free efficiency tools available, and I've recommended it to longtime Tesla owners who dismissed it at first and came back genuinely surprised by the difference it made. You find it under controls, then pedals and steering, then acceleration. Switching to chill limits the available power and torque during acceleration. The car feels noticeably slower off the line. That part is true. But what's happening underneath is that you're spreading the same acceleration over a longer time window, which draws current from the battery more gradually and at lower peak demand. That efficiency difference is real and measurable, especially over a full day of city and suburban driving where you're accelerating from stops dozens of times. What most people don't know is that chill mode does something additional in cold weather that goes beyond just limiting torque. Tesla's documentation explains that selecting chill allows the heat pump to draw more thermal energy from the battery system to heat the cabin efficiently, rather than holding that thermal capacity in reserve for peak acceleration performance. So in winter, you're simultaneously getting smoother, more efficient driving and better cabin heating from the same setting. I've seen owners pick up noticeable range on cold mornings just from this one change. The way I usually suggest using it, you don't have to live in chill mode. If you're merging onto a freeway or you want the full experience, switch back. But for a commute, errands, or any drive where you're not pushing the car, it's worth toggling on. Most people who try it for a week stop thinking about it as a sacrifice and start thinking of it as the sensible default. Method number 2. Precondition while plugged in before every drive. If there's one habit that separates owners who consistently get good range from those who don't, it's this one. And it's especially relevant in any climate that gets cold, though it applies to extreme heat too. Here's what usually happens when people skip preconditioning. They get in a cold car, they crank the heat, and they drive off. The battery is cold, the cabin is cold, and the Tesla is now using stored battery energy to warm both simultaneously while you're also asking it to drive. Cold lithium-ion cells are chemically less efficient at delivering power. They can't release energy as freely as a warm cell. On top of that, regenerative braking in a cold battery is restricted because cold cells can't accept a charge quickly. You'll see a blue snowflake icon on your screen when this is happening. Essentially, you've started the drive already behind on two fronts. Preconditioning solves both of those problems before you leave. Open the Tesla app, go to Climate, set your departure temperature, and activate it while the car is still plugged in. Tesla recommends doing this 30 to 45 minutes before you plan to leave. What happens is the car warms the high-voltage battery and the cabin using power from the grid. So when you disconnect and drive away, you have a thermally ready battery that's operating at full efficiency and full regen capacity from the first mile. You haven't spent a single % of your stored charge on warming up. The scheduled departure feature takes this a step further. You set a departure time directly on the touchscreen under Controls, and Tesla handles the preconditioning automatically every day. I've talked to owners who set it once when they first got the car and then forgot about it entirely, which is exactly how it should work. It's the kind of feature that quietly adds miles to your routine without requiring any ongoing effort. One more layer that often surprises people. A warm battery doesn't just affect range, it affects charging speed too. If you're driving to a supercharger, navigating to it through the Tesla navigation system triggers battery preconditioning for the charge session. The car warms the battery to its optimal temperature so it's ready to accept maximum charging rate when you arrive. That's why Tesla consistently recommends using in-car navigation to supercharger destinations rather than a third-party map app. The battery prep happens automatically in the background and can shave meaningful time off a charging stop. Method number 1. Master regenerative braking and learn to drive on one pedal. If I had 60 seconds with a brand new Tesla owner before they drove off the lot, this is what I'd tell them. Regenerative braking is the most fundamentally different thing about driving an electric car, and most people never fully take advantage of it because nobody walked them through how it actually works. When you lift your foot off the accelerator in a Tesla, the electric motors reverse their operation and become generators. They slow the car down by converting kinetic energy back into electricity and feeding it into the battery. Every time you decelerate, every stoplight, every slowdown for traffic, every off-ramp, you have the opportunity to recover energy that would otherwise be wasted as heat through friction brakes. The amount that gets recovered depends directly on how you drive. The setting most people are missing is in Controls, under Pedals and Steering, called Stopping Mode. Set it to Hold. In Hold mode, regenerative braking extends all the way down to a complete stop. The car brings itself to a full standstill through energy recovery alone, without touching the friction brakes. This is what people mean when they talk about one-pedal driving, and in city or suburban driving it's genuinely transformative. Every deceleration becomes a small charge event. Stack those up across a commute and the recovery numbers become meaningful. Here's the part that I find most owners haven't thought through. Hard braking actively undermines all of this. When you brake sharply, the car transitions to friction braking, the traditional pads, which dissipates that kinetic energy as heat into the atmosphere instead of recovering it as electricity. You don't just miss the recovery, you also wear your brake pads faster. In my experience, Tesla owners who genuinely commit to smooth, anticipatory driving, lifting off early, letting regen do the work, end up rarely touching the brake pedal at all in normal driving. Their brake pads last far longer than expected, and their efficiency numbers are consistently better. The other piece of the regen picture is charge level, which connects back to method 6. If you've charged to 100%, the battery is full and has limited ability to accept the energy regen tries to return. You'll notice regenerative braking feels weaker when the car is nearly fully charged. This is the system protecting the battery from overcharging. It's intentional. Keeping your daily charge at 80% isn't just about battery longevity, it's about giving your regen system room to operate at full strength from the moment you leave the driveway. Taken together, everything in this video is connected. Preconditioning makes regen available from the first mile. The charge limit gives regen somewhere to put the energy. Chill mode and smoother acceleration reduce the total energy budget you're working with. Managing parked drain means you arrive at your destination with what you expected, and the Energy app makes all of it visible so you can actually see the impact of your habits in real time. None of this requires spending $1, it just requires knowing what's there and using it. 7 methods, all free. Most of them take less than 5 minutes to set up and then run in the background without you thinking about them again. If you found one in here that you hadn't heard before, or one you'd heard of but never really understood until now, drop it in the comments. I read through them and it genuinely helps me understand what to cover next. If you've got a friend who just picked up a Model 3 or Model Y and they're still figuring out the range picture, share this with them. Subscribe if you want more content like this. New videos every week. I'll see you in the next one.